Okay, I'm gonna start letting people in, so just be prepared. Crystal's also in on her computer, but she's just gonna be monitoring stuff, so just ignore her. Yeah, starting to let people in now. Hi everyone, welcome to the panel. We're just gonna give a few minutes for everyone to start trickling in, and then we'll get started right away. Yeah, panelists will have their cameras on, but feel free to keep yours off or turn them on, up to you guys. Okay, we're just gonna go ahead and get started. Just because I think we have a lot of things to cover, and we still want to give you guys time to ask questions at the end, if we don't cover anything that you want answered. So I'm just gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about what we're gonna be doing today. First, we're gonna introduce ourselves, and then we'll go straight into the panel, which is a compilation of the questions that you guys asked in the RSVP form, and then also just some of our general tips and tricks that we wanted to share as well. And then at the end, there will be a chance for open Q&A for you guys to ask any questions that you still may have that we might not have covered. So for that section, you can feel free to unmute and ask a question, but I think the most efficient way to do that would probably be for you guys to ask those questions in the chat. Also, if you think of any questions during the panel, please try not to unmute and ask. If you have any questions that you want us to follow up on, again, type that in the chat. You can send it whenever, but then we'll either if Crystal and I will if we see it during the panel section, we might answer it, or we'll again save all of that for open Q&A at the end. So yeah, we would just really appreciate that we are able to get through this as fast as possible because obviously we want to respect your time. So yeah, we will try to wrap this up by 12:30, but if anyone doesn't have any outstanding questions on how this is going to run, we'll just go ahead and get started. Yeah, let's start with introduction. So I'll go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Annie. I am a rising sophomore at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm studying math and economics in the college, and yeah, I am also the president of Smile Tutors. So this is a project I've been working on for a while, and I'm very excited that you guys are here to share this panel with me. So to Crystal.
Hi guys, I'm Crystal. I am a rising sophomore at Carnegie Mellon University. My major is material science and engineering with an additional major in biomedical engineering. Yeah, and I am secretary of Smile Tutors, and Annie's been a longtime friend of mine, so really happy to be helping out with this.
Okay, we'll move on to our panelists now, and I'll just have them introduce themselves based on the order on here.
Hi everyone, my name is Luke. I'm also a rising sophomore at William and Mary. A couple other schools I got into were Middlebury, which for my year had like a 9% acceptance rate, and then UVA as well. I'm studying neuroscience, but I'm also really passionate about foreign languages and the humanities. And I'm also vice president of Smile Tutors, so I'm also happy to see all you guys here today.
Hey, I'm Cindy. I'm a rising sophomore at Stanford, and I'm majoring in chemical engineering and math. I also got into Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Brown. I was a big musician in high school. I still play. I play the oboe. So if you're also like a musician and you're curious about like college apps and stuff, so feel free to chat with me. But yeah, excited.
Hi, my name's Adrian. I'll be a first year at UVA. I'm going to be majoring in finance, and I've known Annie and all the other board members for a while, and I've been on the team.
Cool. And then the rest of our panelists.
Hi everyone, I'm Isabel. I'm going to be an incoming freshman at Brown, majoring in modern culture and media. And some other notable schools I got into other than Brown were UPenn, UMich, UNC Chapel Hill, Georgia Tech, University of South Carolina or Southern California, and UC Berkeley.
Hey guys, I'm Preston. I'm an incoming freshman at Princeton. I'm probably gonna major in economics, although I'm undecided as of right now. Some other schools I got into were Northwestern, Dartmouth, Williams, UVA, UNC, Michigan, and I'm not like part of Small Tutors, but I'm very happy.
Hey everyone, I'm Summer. I'm going to be an incoming freshman at Brown University. Some other schools I got into were University of Washington, University of Virginia, Georgetown University, and Middlebury College. Yeah, I haven't worked that much with small tutors, but I'm really excited to be here to help everyone out.
Hi, I'm Richard. I'm an incoming freshman at UC Berkeley studying chemical engineering, and I plan to minor in food systems. And some other notable schools I got into were like UVA, UW-Madison. I also got into UC San Diego and UC Davis. Um, yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you guys so much. And again, to all the panelists, thank you for coming and volunteering your time to be with us. We're very excited that you're here. And again, if any of you guys that are participants of the panel, if you guys have specific questions for a certain panelist, I will have their contact information up at the end of the panel. So if you have maybe questions for Cindy, if you're on the music side, or if you're curious about the UC application process specifically, like you'll learn more about the panelists as we go through the process. But yeah, you'll have chances to reach out to them at the end if you need to. Okay, let's just dive right into the panel so we get on with it. Yeah, and again, this is all stuff that you guys have asked us through the RSVP form. And just a reminder, if you have any follow-up questions, please ask them through the chat.
Okay. So our first question is, how do you build your college list? Cindy, would you like to start?
Sure. I would say start with like research. Um, if you're like starting with what majors you'd be interested, clubs, programs, but also like think about how locked in are you to like what you want to do right now, and will your school allow you to change that? I kind of started by looking at like good schools with good STEM programs and then going from there. And then also like looking at unfiltered opinions on social media sites of your choice. As to early versus regular decision, anecdotally, I'm quite biased because I early action to Yale and I don't go to Yale. So if Yale was like ED, I don't think I would have been able to back out and I wouldn't even have had the chance to come to Stanford. So I guess from my personal experience, ED versus EA, like maybe try EA, but only ED if you're, you like really, really have a strong reason for committing. Just make sure you do your research beforehand. It all comes down to research. But yeah, that's what I've got.
Cool. And then Annie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about EA versus RD, because I also did ED school at ED Columbia, and I got deferred and ended up not getting in, but I think I learned a lot throughout the process. I think, like Cindy, I would really suggest doing, I mean, this all boils down to, again, research, but I would really suggest doing a lot of research and really making sure if you are EDing to a school that you really are locked into that school and also be aware, like, if you're going to be able to financially afford that school. And just for anyone that might not know, the terminology ED is early decision, and that one is binding. So if you apply early decision to a school and you get in, then you have to go to that school unless there's some like gigantic reason why you can't. And then it's also restrictive, so you can only ED to one school. REA, which is re not restrictive early action, is what Cindy did to Yale. It's early action, which means it's not binding. So if you get in, you don't have to go, but you can only REA one school. I think Harvard does REA and Yale does REA, and a couple other schools do REA. But yeah, really do your research whether you're EDing a school or REAing a school. And then for RD, that's just regular decision, and that is later on in the timeline. But yeah, just really make sure to do your research on that.
And then Richard, if you could talk about safety or like reach target and safety schools.
Yeah, so when building your college list, like for size, like how many schools you're applying to, it's honestly like that's very personal. It's like up to whoever is applying. I've seen people apply as little as like two or three, and then as many as 20. But like the general rule of thumb, I think, is like having like one to like three safeties, and then like having decent like more target schools than like safeties and reaches, and then having like a couple of reaches. So that's like generally what I've heard and seen. Um, how you can like kind of tell like what's a safety or target or reach. Um, there's like a lot of like kind of like calculator tools. I mean, that's what I kind of used. But it's like the best way I think is just kind of like comparing yourself to other students who have gotten in previously, which I mean, obviously that's not a guarantee that you are going to get in, but it's a good like rule of thumb to measure how likely you are to be admitted or rejected or whatever from a school.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note that like these acceptance rates, they're subjective, right? If you go online and you search up UVA acceptance rate, it's actually I don't know what it is anymore, but when I was applying it was like 16%, right? But if you look up UVA in-state acceptance rate, it's a lot higher than that. And also for schools like UNC Chapel Hill, I think their in-state is higher than their out-of-state. So I think that's also something to consider. Yeah. Does any other panelist want to give an opinion on this? Okay, we're just gonna go ahead and move on to the next question. Again, if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to ask in the chat. Okay, so now we're gonna kind of go over a brief overview of the role of each component in the application. And this section we're gonna kind of focus on if you're applying through the Common App. So whether or not how much the Common App essay plays into it, how much your activities list plays into it, and kind of how much your supplemental essays play a factor in your application, and kind of how they all fit together. Summer, do you want to start us off with this one?
Yeah, sure. So I'm gonna be honest, when I first opened the Common App, I was so lost. It can be very, very overwhelming at first. But if you break, if you look at it in sections, it gets a lot easier. And the three main sections that you should focus on are on the screen: Common App essay, your activities list, and your supplementals. So the Common App essay is where the college is going to get to know you, not the specifics, but just what you think you are at the core, at your core, essentially. And it's very important to be thorough and be descriptive and try to max out the word limit because you want to try to get as much information in there as possible. And for your activities list, you want to make sure that you're not using passive voice, you're using active voice, and you're also trying to fit everything you can describe about those activities in that activities section list. And for your supplementals, this is where you want to kind of tie everything you have together and show your colleges why you belong there, why you want to go there, and what you can contribute to that university. And in my opinion, I believe that essays are the most important part of your application because they're the most personal. It's not just a list of facts, it's your story. And that's essentially what all these college admissions, like what they want to know is your story.
Yeah, thanks so much, Summer. Isabel, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about how you framed together your entire application and from your perspective and touch on some of that?
Yeah, sure. So I think when we look at the Common App, it's very narrative based. So around all your activities, there's space for 10 activities in the Common App, 5 honors and awards. You're crafting a narrative, a storyline, something preferably cohesive around everything you do and how that makes up who you are. And then I think in your Common App essay, also something that's really important is to make sure it reflects your values and think about what's important to you as a person, what makes you who you are, like parts of your identity that you couldn't live without or that are very important that other people know that this is what makes you you. Personally, throughout my process, my activities weren't incredibly cohesive. I did some arts, I did some STEM, I also did a lot of kind of community work. So then I had to find a way to craft like a good kind of summary of what I wanted to do for my major and how it tied in all these aspects of who I was based on how I've grown from these activities. So it's, I think, a big emphasis about how you want to write about yourself, especially in supplemental essays, is cohesion. Make sure you're building one full person. I think there's certain questions in here about declaring a major which doesn't align with your extracurriculars and curriculum. I think that this is it's debatable depending on situation. I think for a lot of people, you can switch majors and you can see how easy that is once you get into certain schools. But also, if your top activity is physics club and you spent like 60 hours on it, maybe you don't want to be applying for an English major. So just think about how you're presenting yourself as a whole.
Yeah, thanks so much, Isabel. Preston, do you want to add on anything, maybe some insights into the admissions process that you've gained throughout the process?
Yeah, I think Isabel and Summer kind of harped on it. Like, yeah, the everything is important, right? Your activities, your ECs, your words, your essays, etc. But it's kind of how you form like a cohesive narrative. And I think like that's like the main takeaway, right? Like you can have a lot of different things. For instance, on my application, I was like very debate focused, but I also had stuff like like civic engagement, civic service, etc. And I do think like the way you frame yourself is if you can name your application, like including your activities, your essays, all of that, into like one line. So for instance, when I was applying to colleges, that was like amidst all the like, riots and the protests across campuses. So I think colleges really wanted to see like mediators, those who were going to bring people together and not push people against each other. So I kind of framed my Common App essay through my, or just like my narrative in general, through like my debate stuff, through like my like civic engagement, etc., and kind of formed myself as like a mediator who like brings people together on campus as opposed to like a more activist approach. And I think that's what really helped me, and especially for a lot of these colleges. So I just say like frame your narrative. You can have a bunch of different ECs, you can have a bunch of different awards, and your essays can harp about a lot of different things, but try to find like one clear narrative that like you can label yourself. For instance, I was able to like label myself a mediator. You could label yourself like an entrepreneur or like a activist, etc. Just kind of like something that is like a label that colleges can get out of from every part of your application.
Yeah, thanks so much, Preston. That's very insightful. I'm gonna give a chance for the rest of the panelists to add any opinions if they have any.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in quick and say that, well, your Common App essay, your main one is like the core of who you are and gives a really good picture to the admissions officers of like what kind of person you'd be on that campus. The supplemental essays are kind of an opportunity to hone in on what that school has specifically to offer you because each school is going to have their own supplemental essays. So making sure you take the time to research what that school has to offer for you and how you see yourself fitting into that community and taking advantage of those opportunities, that's really going to leverage your application in comparison to others because they want to see how you are going to make good use of that school and why that school is the one for you and not any other. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely very helpful, Luke. Anybody else on the panel want to share anything else? Okay, perfect. We will move on to the next part, which is similar to the last question, but there are other schools out there that don't use the common application. Schools like the UC systems, MIT uses their own application, and I think Georgetown does as well. Um, so I think, Isabel, why don't you talk a little bit about your experience with that time?
Yeah, so I think general knowledge, I'll be talking mostly on the UC system because I applied through that and I didn't use any other portals to apply to colleges. But the difference with the UC system from the Common App that it is slightly more achievement based than it is narrative based. You still do write essays, but they aren't the grand like Common App essay that's 650 words and it's one big thing to summarize. The UC system lets you pick 4 out of 8 possible PIQ personal insight question prompts, which are going to be shorter 350 word essays that you can kind of show different aspects of yourself. And one of which I did like use my Common App essay and shorten it and use it for a prompt. But then you kind of have to come up with 3 other sides of yourself and show some variety through that. Since they're shorter, they're not as much fluff and not as much, I think, of like the Common App, like fancy, flowy writing that we see a lot. But so those are that's a main difference between the two. GPA and academics are also weighed a lot heavier in the UC system, as well as activities and awards, which I believe in total they give you 20 slots for. Not that you have to fill up all of them. But being that they also don't take letters of recommendation, that makes it slightly less personality narrative driven and more achievement focused. But I say PIQs and your writing is still gonna have a really strong value in that. Oh, also, they are, at least when I applied, test optional. So that was also a big thing where a lot of UC schools, even Berkeley and like UCLA, did not look at your SAT, ACT scores, even if you submitted them.
And then Richard, do you have anything to add?
For like the UC applications, Isabel was pretty spot on. Like the only other thing I would add was like I don't think Isabel explicitly mentioned it, but the UC application, it's like one application that you can use to apply to any of the campuses within the UC system. So it's like it's not like the Common App where like each university will usually have like their own supplementals, and then you have like one like singular Common App essay. For the UC, it's just like you have the 4 PIQs, and then you can use that to apply to any combination of UC schools you want to. And then I did apply to MIT. So for MIT, it also didn't have like, from what I remember, it wasn't like a big essay. Instead, they have 5 short, smaller essays. But they're very heavily focused on MIT values and how like you would fit in with MIT. And obviously for MIT it was also very STEM focused, so they wanted to hear a lot about like STEM experience and activities and extracurriculars and things like that. So like for MIT, I think the main takeaway was it was very STEM focused and very focused on like how you would be a good fit for MIT.
Cool. And then our next section is going to be on financial aid and scholarships. And this includes things like the FAFSA, CSS profile, and also ROTC, and then any school-specific scholarships as well. Luke, do you want to start?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm sure you all are very familiar with hearing about the FAFSA and the CSS. The FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. This is something that you'll file with your parents. It gives the federal government information about your family's financial status so that they know what kinds of aid that you need. Um, Everyone should be applying for this, even if you don't think that your family is in need, because there are certain grants, like state grants, like the Virginia Commonwealth Grant, for example, where any undergraduate student in their first year receives 5,000 towards their tuition if they're going to an in-state school. That's not something that's need-based, and that's something that you would only qualify for if you filled out the FAFSA. So yeah, FAFSA is just your gateway to federal grants and loans, state grants, institutional grants, need-based aid, all of that. Um, it opens October 1st. The sooner that you file it, the better. Because usually it's kind of like a priority system. The people who file first are have a better chance at getting more aid. Um, CSS profile comes out at the same time. It does cost money to file the CSS. FAFSA is free again. CSS is more for private institutional aid. It takes into account a bit more about your family's finances, and certain schools value it over the FAFSA. So you should look at the schools you're applying to and if they require you to fill out the CSS profile. Um, and then for scholarships, the key thing with scholarships is kind of starting early and finding things that are niche and applicable to you. The different types of scholarships that you'll see are merit-based ones, ones that are skill-based, and then ones that are need-based. So merit-based and skill-based, you should be looking for things that are applicable to you. Maybe you've done science fair a bunch, or you're really interested in STEM programs. There are going to be tons of scholarships for that. And you really want to be applying wide and to a lot of smaller scholarships if you really want to secure money, because even though there might be these huge, like $10,000, $100,000 scholarships, you're going to have like hundreds of thousands of other, or at least tens of thousands of other applicants. So your likelihood of securing those is much lower. Um, so you really want to be finding like niche opportunities to apply for these scholarships, applying to, I mean, the people that I've heard real success from apply to upwards of 100, 200 scholarships. And not that necessarily if you're going to apply for them, you have to be applying for that many, but if you want a real chance at getting some aid, you should be applying for a lot. Keeping track of these, you would probably want a spreadsheet, making sure that you're keeping track of kind of the requirements for each of these and deadlines. A lot of them are, their deadlines are in fall of your senior year. There are still a lot in spring of senior year, and you can always apply throughout college, but staying on top of it, you should, if you're really looking for scholarships as a form of financial aid, you should start in the fall of your senior year. Um, yeah, I think that's about it. As far as finding scholarship opportunities, there are a lot of like online programs like scholarships.com or FastWeb where you can kind of filter out the kinds of scholarships that you're looking for again, so you can find these niche opportunities. That's all I have to say.
Great. Cool. Summer, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, so I agree with everything Luke said. You should start early, apply to as many as possible to get like the highest chance of attaining those scholarships. But I actually did not apply for any other scholarships except for Army ROTC. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically a 4-year training course in a way where it prepares you to join the military. And then afterwards, once you graduate, you either do 4 years in active duty or 8 years in the reserves. And it sounds really intimidating at first, but the benefits are great, and it's no more of a commitment than a student job while you're in college. And it the benefits I get about 87% of my bill paid for my nearly $100,000 bill. So it's really fantastic in that aspect. It helps phenomenally financially. And commitment wise, you have to take one class a week involving like it's called military science or it's lab where you go outside and have to do military stuff. But I think it's a great opportunity. It's something it can help you a lot, especially if you aren't able to afford one of these really pricey colleges or universities. It is a gateway to go into that. And I do recommend it. It can sound intimidating, but I think it's a great option out there.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Summer, for sharing. And some notable like websites that I know of that can help you match and find scholarships are like scholarships.org, bold.org. If you search up like scholarships for XX and X and like I would search up like scholarships for I don't know like an Asian Americans or scholarships for since I'm going into my sophomore year, college sophomores, a bunch of them will come up on Google and you can just apply, you can make an account and they'll match you with scholarships based on like your circumstances. But then there's also like pretty big scholarships you can apply to. Obviously don't limit yourself to those. Also make use of the small scholarships like Luke said, but Koch Scholars is a big one, Gates Scholars, big one. Um, you could also look into doing Crestbridge. I don't know if that's still open right now, but if you're underclassmen, I would and want to look into Questbridge, I would definitely do that. That's a national college matching program, and it it helps a lot with families with lower income. Yeah, does any other panelists want to add to the financial aid or scholarship section? Real quick, someone is asking about financial aid promises. So I'm gonna read the question out loud. If either Luke or Summer, you guys want to answer it, or if any of the panelists want to answer it, you can go ahead. Regarding the financial aid promises for applying students with household incomes less than a certain amount, I Harvard threshold of 200K. Does anyone know if they wholly provide the aid they commercialize?
Yeah. So I'm not totally familiar with, I guess the is that under 200, between 100,000 and 200,000, that's where you'll get need-based aid. Because I know that under 100,000, any of the Ivy schools, or most schools in general through the Pell Grant, have uh, college costs covered entirely. Between 100,000 and 200,000, that will depend on the institution. They do provide usually as much aid as they can to your family. But there are a lot of circumstances, and that comes down again to the FAFSA and CSS that determine how much aid you're going to be eligible for. They, I don't know, they eliminated some of the factors a couple years ago, like how many siblings you have. Well, how many siblings you have will still be factored in, but stuff like how many siblings in college, that would give you more aid towards that school. Um, Sometimes you can email or call and ask them about these kinds of things on a school by school basis, and they can give you a rough idea of it, but ultimately you won't know until um, you get back that information in the spring. Um, Another note on this is that applying early to schools when you're in this range between 100,000 and 200,000 can reduce the amount of aid that you receive because if you're kind of early decision and they know that you're going to be going to that school, they don't have to provide you as much aid. So that's just something to consider. I'll think on that a bit more. If that didn't answer your question entirely, we can come back to that at the end.
Okay, does anyone else have some insights into this? I'll say real quick, I go to Penn, and Penn also promises full aid or at least of some amount of aid for families making under 200K. And I have a lot of friends that fit into that category. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, obviously, I didn't ask specifically about their financial situation. I'm like not gonna do that, but I know Penn's aid this year has been a little bit tough. Everyone's been talking about not having getting enough and not being happy with their amount. But like Luke said, um, the financial aid people are in some aspect there to help you. You can, if you receive the aid you get and you're not happy with it, you can refute it. You can call them and be like, hey, I can't come to this school, like with this amount of money, like I just can't, like I'm happy to provide more documents. And one of my friends did this and they did end up giving her more aid. So yes, it's a little scary and like it's in uncertain waters, but it's like the offer they give you is not the end all be all. Like you can always negotiate it. Okay, if we have no other thoughts on this, I'm gonna go ahead and go to the next one.
So our next section is going to be sort of a year by year breakdown of like the whole application process. And Adrian, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, so one thing is to start early on everything. For example, when you're about to go into freshman year, take a step ahead and kind of look at what type of clubs that are offered at your school. You can reach out to your teacher that you're gonna have. You can see what classes there are too. As for sophomore year, I think it'd be a good time to try and again like get into those clubs and get like a higher role. For example, you can apply to be like a secretary or vice president, whatever, trying to attain like a leadership position. Also, you should start looking at what type of stuff you want to do in college. Obviously, you don't have to have a direct path or a direct plan yet, but it's good to have a general idea. And for junior year, it's probably going to be your hardest year. There's typically the most amount of APs or IP, whatever it is, like your hardest course load during those 2 semesters. So try and manage your time and kind of get ahead on homework or any tests. Um, and I think between the summers is a really good time to kind of look for high school internships or any job opportunities that are kind of related to the field you want to go into. And lastly, senior year, you need to spend a lot of time on college apps. So from the summer between the end of junior year and the beginning of senior year, should be writing essays, getting all your recommendation letters set, and all that. Yeah.
Yep. And then Preston, if you want to talk a little bit about balancing academics and your extracurriculars.
Yeah, for sure. I think like the main thing to take away from this is academics come first. Like from the start of your freshman year to your senior year, like it doesn't matter how amazing your extracurriculars are unless you're solving cancer or you have like a multi-billion-dollar business. Like your extracurriculars are only going to take you so far. So colleges are looking they do want people who are really driven, have good extracurriculars, etc. But you do need to like make sure your grades are good. If you want to go to like apply to especially those top schools, you're likely going to have like close to a 4.0. So I do think like if you're an incoming like sophomore, junior, like make sure you focus on your academics. So academics come first, extracurriculars come next. I think in terms of balancing it, don't be like too stressed, right? Like most of your extracurriculars don't take like that much time. Obviously do your work do all the work first, but also prioritize extracurriculars that you truly enjoy. So for instance, debate was one of my favorite extracurriculars, but it was something that I actually enjoyed. Like I would enjoy doing debate in my free time, going to debate tournaments on the weekend. So it wasn't that stressful, right? Because my fun time would kind of be like, it's kind of nerdy, but like my fun time would be like doing my extracurriculars. So if you kind of have something like that, where your extracurriculars are kind of like something that's fun for you, right? You don't really have to balance it because it's kind of like your social time anyway. But I think like the main takeaway here is academics come first. And also you don't need too many extracurriculars. I think one like rabbit hole I went down is especially like my sophomore year, I felt like I needed like 15, 20 extracurriculars. I needed to say yes to every opportunity that came up and like was presented in front of me. I don't think that's actually necessary at all. For instance, you only have 10 spots on your extracurriculars, and colleges always prioritize the quality of your extracurriculars over the quantity. So it's fine if you're a member of 25 clubs, but if you're barely showing up to meetings and you're not doing anything meaningful, then it's going to be hard to talk about those extracurriculars and essays, which is very, very important. But more importantly, it's going to be a lot harder to it's going to be a lot harder to like talk about your extracurriculars in the extracurricular section where you have to actually have like concrete evidence that you're actually making meaningful impacts. So I'd say like you prioritize less extracurriculars, hone in on like four or five like really, really, really good ones that you would be very comfortable sharing to colleges, etc. And then prioritize academics first because you need good grades, SAT, ACT, especially with Trump's recent deal with colleges like Columbia and Brown. I think like the reason like what Trump's basically doing is he's forcing those schools to like publish all the information from race to SAT scores, etc. I do think like some colleges are going to have a higher emphasis on those academic parts. So make sure you have good grades and SAT scores, etc. And then you can worry about the extracurriculars and don't prioritize too much for the extracurriculars. Sorry, that was kind of a lot.
Very good, Kristen. That's
And
great.
then Annie, if you want to talk about like a specific extracurricular that made you stand out on your resume.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, I think the biggest EC I had was this. It was Smile Tutors. It started something I started your junior year, which again goes to emphasize like when Adrian was talking about like the year by year breakdown, what you quote unquote should be doing, like obviously that is the timeline that I like if I were gonna do this again, like I would follow that timeline, right? Freshman year, be proactive, get my grades up, look at for jobs clubs to join, sophomore year, like climb my way up the ladder on the leadership positions, join some clubs, more clubs, find those internships. Junior year, make sure I have my scores down, and you know, like there is this quote unquote path that you people want to follow and say this is how you're gonna get into the top 20 schools. This is how you're gonna get into Ivy. But I think my story especially like it's okay if you're not on that path. It's okay if your SAT score is not where you want it to be and you're already in your junior year. It's okay if you feel like you're behind everyone else on extracurriculars in your junior year because I started my most impactful extracurricular in my junior year, right? I think the most important thing when you're finding an EC that's important to you is to make sure you actually care about it and that colleges can see that you're very passionate about what you're doing. I think there's a big stigma around, oh, creating a nonprofit for college applications or finding an internship for college applications. But if you aren't truly passionate about what you're doing, like they can see through it. Like you might be able to like frame it in a way that you think they can't tell, but they can. I think it like you just have to be, I don't know, it will show if you're truly passionate about it. For Smile Tutors, I I think it's important to have kind of like a reason why you started it. If you start it, if you have a genuine reason why for starting it, it's gonna show. I think I talked a lot about why I started it, why I started Smile Tutors in my Common App essay. Um, and sorry, it's admitting someone into the waiting room. But yeah, I talked a lot about like if you're worried about if you're late in the process, I think the Common App essay or your supplemental essays are a great place to explain your origin story or your reason for, I don't know, quote unquote starting late. And you're not starting late. I think it's just become this entire rat race kind of thing in recent years about starting so early. But yes, there is a roadmap, an ideal roadmap, but if you're not on it, I just want to emphasize that it's okay and you're gonna get where you're gonna get and you'll get there. Okay, I'm gonna stop yapping.
Okay, and anyone else on the panel has anything else to add?
Just
Um,
one quick thing to consider when you're choosing APs. This probably won't apply to a lot of people because a lot of you, I'm assuming, are rising seniors. But when choosing APs, remember that the scores that schools are going to see are going to be the ones from from before your senior year. So choosing them for your which AP classes you're going to take and which tests you're going to do well on in your junior year matters more almost than in your senior year. They'll still get the mid-year grade report from your senior year, but knowing how well you're doing in those AP classes or if it's IB, that'll be kind of in your junior year or before that. And then also checking if you're applying to international schools that if they have a requirement for the kinds of scores you need to get into them, like in Oxford, where you have to have, I think, at least fives on AP tests to even be considered to be admitted. Just making sure that you're keeping track of those kinds of requirements for schools.
Yeah. Yeah, I think oh, go ahead.
I will also just emphasize that I think while leadership positions are important in clubs, the value of like extracurriculars in general is what you do during your time in them. So in general, like you can be the president of like some big club, but maybe it has just like 60 random people in it and you guys don't actually do anything every week. But if you're a strong involved member of a club that actively like recycles every week or does a project or helps your community, that's a much bigger benefit than anything else will be, than a title will be. Because you want to write about something substantial that you've actually done. You want there to be evidence of your work, not just a title that, some high schoolers elected you to.
Okay, cool. We're gonna move on because we are.
Sorry, I wanted to add just one last thing. Did anyone touch on letters of rec and building a relationship with a teacher?
That's in a later slide, I
Yeah, we
Okay.
will talk about it a little bit on the timeline section, but yeah, letters of rec are also something to consider when you're going year by year. Yeah, we'll touch on it a little bit deeper later, but yeah, make sure you are building relationships with your teachers and mentors.
So our next section is gonna be more about standardized testing. And this is like SAT, ACT. Isabel, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I do think, especially for us, since we've already applied this changes almost every year, schools switch from test optional to test required to like either schools that don't look at testing at all. So I think definitely when making your college list, if your score is something you don't think is up to par or your score is something you think is really strong, consider that in your process to see whether those schools will either even look at your scores or definitely look at your scores. And then personally, I took the SAT. Annie will talk about the ACT in a second. But I think the SAT, there's a lot of now since it's digital, I did take it on paper. I think there's a lot of great resources online for it, like the SAT question bank. Khan Academy is also an RI resource. There's also many practice tests available through Blue Book online, which will be, I think, the best way to test for it. For the sections of the SAT, math, reading, writing, I think a lot of these will be trained through practice tests, and just the constant review and practice is what is going to get your score up. I think just for writing specifically, those are grammar rules that you can learn by yourself through a workbook or online that you will help boost your score, that I would specifically maybe learn outside of a practice test setting and then take test for. But I think reading, especially the passages, the vocab, a lot of that is just going to be built up from taking practice tests. So I think that's the best form of review. And then also just in the context of college applications, seeing how much SAT score matters is assuming you're applying to a school where they will be looking at your test scores. A lot of schools release a display of the range of quartiles of the range of SAT, ACT score they accept. And I think the general rule of thumb is if you are in the upper 75%, the upper three quartiles, your test score is in that range, then you should submit it. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Isabel. I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about my testing experience. I'm a very big advocate of trying out both tests. I might be a little bit biased, but I took I took the PSAT and then I also took the SAT. I think I took the SAT 3 times, and I was very much not happy with my SAT score. And um, so I don't know. I used up all the resources that the SAT had to offer at the time. At the time, it was only on paper, so I did all the practice tests, like the official practice tests. I basically did all the Khan Academy questions, and my SAT score was not where I wanted it to be. And then I decided I was going to try the ACT. And on my first try on the ACT, I scored very well. So I might be a little bit biased, but I would definitely take a diagnostic for the SAT and the ACT at the very beginning so you don't waste your time because they're both very different tests. I think the SAT is more understanding and more, I don't know, they give you more time per question, so kind of like to trick you a little bit, but I think the ACT is a little bit more straightforward. I think the hardest part about the ACT is the time management aspect of it. It's like 1 minute per question on the math section. So it really depends on what type of test taker you are. So I'm a very big advocate of trying out both tests to see which one you're naturally better at. And then as for like trying to improve your scores, like Isabel said, I think it's very important to use those official practice tests and learning the material outside of the practice tests as well. But I think the biggest thing that helped me was after I would take a practice test is I would look at my test, correct it, and revise it, and really understand why I made a mistake. If I made a mistake, why I made the mistake, and how I would not make that mistake next time. And I actually had, like, maybe you don't have to do this, maybe I was a little bit extra, but I had this entire binder and I would write down the question I got wrong. I would handwrite it, and then I would write in red why I got it wrong, and then I would write in blue how to actually solve it, and then how I wouldn't miss it next time. And it was a little bit extra, but it got me the score I wanted, and I think it's important to really understand the questions that you're answering.
And then if you have time, I think we can go to the next section.
Yeah, we'll head on to the next one. Yeah, we're gonna head back to the letters of rec topic, because I think they're pretty, yeah, we're just gonna talk about letters of rec. Crystal, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so like Luke said before, it's really important to build a relationship with a teacher. So I would recommend trying to pick teachers who maybe know you beyond grades. So for instance, like someone who's witnessed you as a leader or a mentor, or just anyone who can attest to your personal growth and like work ethic, and also maybe has like good stories or anecdotes that they can write about in their letters of rec. Um, Try to pick recommenders in different contexts. So, for instance, you might want a teacher in an academic setting versus like a teacher in an extracurricular. I think it's really important to have both because it gives whoever's reviewing your application a fuller picture of you as a person. But I would also say try to pick recommenders based on like what major you're applying for. So for instance, like I applied like as a STEM major, and so I really like I had two STEM teachers as like my recommenders, and then an optional third one as like an extracurricular. And then I would also say don't forget to look at requirements for the different schools in your college. I remember when I was applying to Cornell, I looked on the website and it was like, if you're applying in the College of Engineering, you need a letter of rec from like a math or a science teacher, I believe. And so I made sure to like incorporate that. But I know like a lot of my friends at CMU, they didn't even realize that when they applied to Cornell. So I would just say be careful about that. Um, in terms of like timeline, I would recommend asking your recommenders like now, like as soon as you see them in person is probably the best. I don't know if you guys still use school links like I don't know what you guys are using now, but in my year we used school links. So what we did was we would go up and talk to them in person, and then if like they agreed, maybe I'd follow up with an email, and then I would add them on like school links so they're like officially like it's like an official request for them to be your recommender. And then also, I know that some teachers might want you to make a brag sheet and send them to them, and it's kind of just like it's kind of in the name. It gives them a sense of who you are if they maybe don't know you that well. So this includes things like your intended major, your extracurriculars, or your jobs, awards and recognitions, any projects you're proud of, or just like anything else you want highlighted that you think they could maybe talk about in their recommendations. And then also just keep in mind that these teachers work really hard. They're probably writing like, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 letters of recommendations each year. And they're definitely doing this on top of their full-time job of teaching, and they're working overtime for these letters of recommendations. So I would recommend giving them like a card or a gift to show your appreciation.
Yeah, very comprehensive overview. Summer, do you want to add anything?
I think Crystal covered most everything, but I would say, make sure you get a letter of rec from a teacher that teaches in core subjects like math, science, English, or history. And I would also recommend that going along, like get a recommendation, ask for a recommendation that goes along with your major, but also one of your strengths. So if you're really good at English and you know that's what you want to do, make sure you get an English teacher. That way they can write about how strong you are in that subject and why you would be a good addition into that department at the university you're applying to. And also do ask early and another thing is, so I actually moved after my junior year. So I had a senior year in a completely different state. So I sent over emails to ask my teachers if they could write my letter of rec, and they did. So they don't have to be current teachers you have. You can ask teachers from your sophomore year, your junior year, and just make sure it's someone that you have a close relationship to and someone that understands you, like Crystal said, not just as a student, but as a person.
Yeah, thanks, Summer. Really quickly, Isabel, if you want to add something quick.
Okay. Two things I will say is, first of all, remember that a lot of schools will also allow you to send additional letters of recommendation, meaning that outside of these two core teachers, you will probably send a counselor recommendation to every school you apply to. And but also remember to keep in mind other people you could ask, like club sponsors, like people in your teachers, like adults in your extracurriculars, if you work a job, summer program professors, if you work in a lab, any other adults that can testify for you in a different setting. And then also, I think something just to keep in mind is that if your teacher who writes your letter of recommendation will be writing letters of rec for other kids who will be applying to the same schools that you apply to. So just keep in mind that in that light, there might be a little comparison there to just make sure you pick the professor that's going to paint you in the best light in comparison to your peers as well.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna move on real quick. Thanks so much for the panelists that have spoken.
Okay, and now we're gonna move on to talk about essays, and this is like Common App essays as well as supplemental essays. Luke, do you want to start?
Yeah, I guess what I'll lead off with here, because we've talked already a lot about what they're looking for in Common App essays and in supplemental essays, but really like at the core, what is the purpose of that essay? And it's an opportunity to show kind of your voice in the holistic whole of your application. Obviously, they're not getting the opportunity to sit down with you and interview you and see like what your personality is like. So your essays are the opportunity to connect with them and to give them a lasting impression of what you would look like on their college campus. Something else that I want to emphasize is that there is no perfect essay. Like, there's kind of this idea of like the great American college essay and like it being this perfect thing, but there is no like one perfect essay topic that is going to get you into your schools. It's rather that there are like a myriad of possible great essay topics that could interest a admissions officer, and you just have to find something that's authentic and true to you and that shows who you are. Um, and also, like Isabel mentioned earlier, it's a lot about painting a narrative. You want your application to be this very cohesive, alive thing, and your essays are kind of the vehicle that you are using to get that across because your ECs, your extracurriculars and activities, as much as they are a big part of your picture, they can't know who you are just from what you've been doing. Yeah.
Okay, and then Cindy, if you want to talk a little bit about maybe like how to write your college essays.
Sure, yeah. I think the hardest part is brainstorming. But like just get something done. Like even if you think it's bad, like the way I did it was like I would bullet point like everything that I could possibly write about and then like see which one would flow the best. And sometimes it wasn't like the one that I originally thought would work, but it ended up working. Because like the essays are kind of all the admissions team has to really know about you. And like the biggest thing I focused on was to like emphasize me as a person, like what I value, what I like, and to really like capture my voice. I think voice is also a big one, to make me like come off the page. And I think like a misconception that people have is that they need to be perfect and they have to be polished. But I think as long as your ideas get communicated and your personality comes through. It like that's really all you need. It might take a lot of tries, but look at it like a final, reflection on your high school years and really have fun with them.
And then, Annie, if you want to share something that you're really proud of that made you stand out in your essays.
Yeah, I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think there's obviously there's like many different ways you can approach your essays. I think Cindy talked about how she just like bullet pointed a bunch down and see which one flows the best, which obviously is a great way to write your essays. I think colleges love to see um, your voice and who you are as a person, but I think there's also different approaches. I think the approach I used was kind of really, I think my biggest concern about my application at the time was I felt like my application wasn't cohesive. I felt like my major didn't match up with my ECs and my ECs didn't really match up with like I don't know. Like I just thought at the time I was very worried about like the quote unquote spike, right? I don't know if you guys have heard about that, but that was a big thing when I was applying. People were saying you have to have a spike, you have to have all your ECs make sense, you have to yeah. I was like, I don't have one, like what do I do? And I want to emphasize that again, you don't need a spike. Like there's no right or wrong way to approach this thing. But what I did was I used my Common App essay to kind of tie my entire application together. And that was because a lot of my extracurriculars were tutoring focused and teaching focused, but I was applying as a math major everywhere. And I was like, I don't really see like, and I didn't have any like AIME, like Math Olympiad stuff, like where a bunch of other like math majors would be applying with those awards. So I used the Common App essay as a way to convey to the college application admissions as saying, I want to pursue math because I want to be a professor in the future. And that kind of tied my ECs and my major together. Now, am I doing that now? Like not necessarily because obviously your career path is going to change and stuff like that. Like you're not set on this one path for the rest of your life, but it's just I think essays are a really great way to pull your application together and also try to find your voice. That's how I used it, but I also know that a lot of other people use their essays as just a place to express themselves. So I just want to emphasize again, there's no right or wrong way to approach the essay.
And then, Richard, really quick, if you want to add something.
Yeah, sure. So definitely agree with what everyone else has said. So, I was gonna give like a few quick pointers, I guess. I think it's like, I think it's a lot easier, especially in the brainstorming process, to write. It's a lot more easier to cut down later than it is to not have enough, like starting off with not enough and then trying to find a way to like add fluff to make it reach a certain like word limit. Because for me, my some of my first drafts were literally 2,000 words, and I cut that down. And then for cutting down, it's like really important to like kind of look at. I For me, what helped me help like cut things down was I focused on looking at each individual like sentence and then trying to figure out is does this add something? And if it didn't, I would get rid of it. And then I think like one other thing would just be like try not to use your personal statement or your like as a place to list activities because there's an activity section for a reason. If you're gonna mention activities or like focus on activity, try to tie that into how that echoes either like your character or values or like kind of what Annie did with how like using your essay to tie all your activities into your major and something like that.
Yeah. Just real quick, I also want to like if you're having trouble finding a topic to talk about, I would suggest going with Cindy's method of like brain dumping and writing like everything you could possibly write about. And I would not try to limit yourself to, oh, I need to tie my application together. Oh, I need to show this and this and this. If you're having trouble finding a topic where you don't know what to write, you should, in my opinion, you should be doing the brain dumping method. Okay. Um, we're gonna move on if anyone doesn't have anything else to add. But one of the last few things I wanted to talk about is the concept of holistic review, and this is um, we're gonna talk a little bit more on the admissions officer side of things. And yeah, Luke, do you want to start us off on this?
Yeah, I'm sure all of you or most of you have at least heard of holistic review. It's kind of the idea that no single part of your application is what's gonna get you in, and that they look at each of the parts not equally exactly, but to build a bigger picture of who you are, and that each part of your application is contributing to that. Holistic review as a concept can be kind of frustrating because if you don't get in, it's kind of like there was no specific reason that you didn't get in. It was just like, oh, you weren't the right fit. But really, that is kind of a relieving idea because if you think about it, the schools that you are a good fit for, you are going to get into. They are considering every part of your application and whether you're going to fit in there with the academic rigor or with the programs that they have to offer. Yeah, and I lost my train of thought, but I'm gonna let Summer take over, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about the common data set, which is kind of how you can figure out what the values of your school are. Because again, it's about kind of a narrative and tailoring your application to what that school wants to see.
Yeah, so holistic review, um, like we said, I think in the end it is a good thing because the school that the schools that you get accepted to, they want you to be there, while the schools that you won't get into, the reason why, well, you won't ever know the reason why, but one of them will be because they don't feel like you're a good fit. And that can feel insulting at first. I know I've been rejected, but in the end, you got to think about it as, if, let's say that you did go there and you didn't feel like it was the right fit and you don't feel like you belong there, in the end, it's better to go to the school that you did get accepted to. That kind of makes sense. But how to make up for your weaknesses in your application is by highlighting your strengths. So for me, my SAT score was not above average for either Brown or Georgetown, but I still got in because I was able to highlight my strengths through my essays and just explaining the situation I've been in, what I've learned from my life experience, and how I can bring everything, like how my upbringing will affect my time at at the university I'll go to, and what how I want to help the students there, how I want to help the school, and what I want to do for my life and just beyond. And how to make it seem more impressive is just highlighting who you are, what you want to do, what you bring to the table, and just put your best foot forward, and just try your best. That's what matters in the end.
Yeah, thanks so much, Summer. Yeah, I think we're gonna loop back over to Luke. He's gonna talk about the common data set and how to kind of use that to your advantage.
Yeah. So I mentioned like kind of crafting a narrative with your application, but something also that you need to consider is authenticity. They know, like like Annie said earlier, they can kind of tell what's genuine and what's not in your application, and they're not trying to see like this perfect student. They just want to see a good student who fits in at their school and get like the whole picture of you. So each part of your application is giving them different kinds of information about that. The thing about common data sets, if you haven't heard of common data sets, it's something that's available online that you can search up. So all you have to type in is like name of school, common data set, and I mean, every public school has to make their common data sets available, and I think most privates do anyways. But these will give you all the demographic information about the schools you're looking at. So these can be useful for kind of making your school list and figuring out what schools you want to apply to. Especially Section C of each of these common data sets. Section C gives you information about admissions and what they're looking for and what they value in their applicants. So certain schools might value volunteer experience more than others. Certain ones value personality more than other ones do. Some are going to be a bit more utilitarian, just looking at statistics and how well you're doing as a student. But other schools, like for example, U Chicago, if you're familiar with like their wacky essay prompts, if you look at their common data set, personality is very highly considered. Um, so it's not so much about looking at these and then tailoring your application to exactly what you think they need or want to see, but it's more about just seeing what they value and if that kind of fits with your holistic whole and who you are as a person.
Okay, yeah, that's great. I think, yeah, common data sets are a very it's a resource that you can definitely utilize within the application process.
Yeah.
Yeah, does anyone have anything else to add? If not, we will move on. Okay, perfect.
Okay, so our next discussion is gonna be on like sort of like a general application timeline, like when things open, when things are due. Isabel, do you want to start?
Sure. So generally the Common App opens August 1st, and that could be a good time to put in like some general information like address, grades, like fill out your activities section. I'd say asking for a letter of regs, you could even do before that. I think end of junior year is a good time to ask for letters of reg or very beginning of senior year, but I think if you're doing it beginning of senior year, as soon as school starts, you should find the teachers that you know you want letters from and talk to them because some teachers do have a quota and you want to make sure you're in that group. And then after that financial aid opens, you can put in your info for the FAFSA or the CSS profile. Early application deadlines will generally be November 1st, though some schools are October 15th, so make sure you keep track of that. And then early decisions will also be November 1st around that time. So, and then following that will be regular decision, most of which will be due by the first week of January, varying from January 1st to like maybe 5th. And then additional financial aid deadlines, scholarships, anything else that you wanted to add to your plate, and regular decisions will come out just varyingly throughout the spring. Some schools will like to warn you, some schools will not, and you'll just get an email in your inbox. And then decision day is May 1st, in which you will decide to, decide which school you're going to and show it off for everyone to see. But I think in terms of time management, personally, I think I can speak a lot on this since I took a very heavy course load all 4 years, and additionally, I applied to 23 schools while being a student athlete in the fall. So that was a very busy time of the year for me. I think in general, it's maximizing your time and making sure like I still spent like time lying on my bed, like scrolling through my phone, but you need to make sure that you get the stuff you need to get done during that time. And you need to make sure you're in a productive space where you know you will productively use the time you set aside to work. So for me personally, that was going to the library. I would go to the library almost every day after school, maybe even on the weekends. If I had practice, I would go to practice and then I'd come home and I would, maybe take a nap and then get to work as soon as I could after that. I wrote supplemental essays on bus rides between games. I wrote supplemental essays at like away games when like before we were going to warm up. And it's really just, even if you only have an hour of time, you can still squeeze a lot of things into that period because the hour of time will go by really quick if you keep saying, oh, well, I only have an hour. I probably can't write my Common App essay during this time, but you can start brainstorming. You can start a first draft. You can always make more of your time than you currently are. And I think that's one of the most important things in your time management.
Yeah, absolutely. Adrian, if you want to talk about like maybe senior year grades.
Yeah, building off of what Isabel said, I think managing your grades during senior year is kind of hard. So first semester matters because the colleges will see up to your first and second quarter. However, if you're pending on like a wait list or something, I'm pretty sure colleges can also see second semester. Um, and so you kind of want to manage your time in terms of getting all your tests in. If you have retakes available, make sure to do them when you can early on, so you don't have to stress later in the year. And in terms more of time management, you should kind of lock in terms of like getting your work done early. I also think if you're doing like a sport, music, both of which I did, it's really important to kind of let your teachers know if you're going to be busy a week. Uh, let your like your coach know, for example, if you can't go to a practice or something because you have homework. Make sure you put your grades first, but education first before any of the other extra you're doing.
Yep. And then Preston, really quick, if you want to add something.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I'll say is, I think like your senior year should be dedicated to college apps because they take a lot more than like people expect, especially if those essays and your personal statement. It takes hours to like write a really, really good personal statement and you need so many revisions. So I'd say like you should not be spending the first like the summer of your senior year or the fall of your senior year, especially like trying to like go for extracurriculars, trying to like get some last minute words because like by that time like it's too much on your plate. If you don't get them, you're kind of cooked and like it's just not a good feeling. So I like to prioritize all that. I mean, this doesn't really apply to like rising seniors, but juniors and sophomores, that's when you should start looking to hone in on your extracurriculars and awards. So senior year can be a time of just like making sure you're working on your actual common app. I'd also say like extracurriculars, like colleges really like long years, right? Like they want to see like you just started an organization from your freshman year to like your senior year. So I'd prioritize like getting that or done with so your senior year can be spent purely on apps, at least for the fall. The next thing I'll add really quickly is I think you should definitely manage your time well. I think Adrian said this earlier, but like managing your time well is so, so important. I thought I was doing a great job because they started my like common app and everything in August. I had it all planned out. I applied to all my state schools and I was really, really motivated. And then after I applied to my last state school, after I applied to, I already to Princeton. So after applied to Princeton, I like took a like long, long break, right? I took like a month long break, just no apps, just chilling, whatever. And I still had all the like 6, 7 Ivies I was applying to later. So by the time like Princeton came in, thank goodness I got in because otherwise I would have been cooked. Because I had to scratch out all the other Ivies. So that's just like a point of like I really, really wanted to like make sure I was gonna prioritize well, but I still didn't. So just please like get all your schools in. Like I had to delete like 8 schools off my list because I was just like so lackluster, but lock in early and it'll be fine.
Yeah, okay. Lots of great insights. We will move on to the next one, which is kind of the last thing we wanted to talk about. After your entire process, obviously, you're going to be hearing back from your schools and you're going to be getting into a lot of great schools. I mean, you guys are being proactive and coming to this panel, so I believe in you guys. But what do you do after you get into your school? What if you get into a lot and you can't make a decision? So I'm going to have Cindy start with this one.
Yeah, just touching a little bit on back on the financial aid thing. For me, a big thing about schools was like cost. Um, I got into 5 schools. Um, but the problem was I kind of wanted to go to all 5 schools. That was like tough. So I was like, all right, first thing is gonna be cost. And then you can actually like reduce the cost of your schools if you bargain. You can like bargain. I bargained with like almost every school and ended up getting nearly $7,000 off of my Stanford bill. So just like real quick, this will, I guess, be a problem for your spring. But what I did was I would save those financial letters and I would send them everywhere. I'd be like, "Hey, Stanford, Princeton gave me a better aid package. So it'd be like great if you did too, because you're like my top school. You're my top choice. I really want to come here." And then they'd be like, "Oh, great. Okay, here's like $8,000." And I was like, "Awesome." Um, but outside of that, like as for Vibe and stuff, like going to admitted student days is really, really helpful because it's good for like a kind of vibes, gut feeling, all the things. You can like Excel spreadsheet it all you want, look at all the hard numbers, but really like when I visited Stanford, I was like, oh damn, it'd be great if I could come here. And if not, like I understand money and time are also factors. But definitely just getting like real testimonials from like students, and like how they like to hear what they're doing. Like this goes back to doing your research. This can also apply to like when you're considering schools too. Um, but yeah, like I visited every school I was admitted to and was like, oh, I really liked Yale and Stanford. And then that was kind of like the splitting hairs because then I was like, oh, okay, where am I going to grow the most? Where am I going to become, I guess, the best version of myself? I actually picked Stanford because there were more unknowns. Weirdly enough, I know I was like, oh, do your research, but I knew that like not knowing what my major was going to be, not knowing what I was going to do with my life, not knowing what Silicon Valley was like, that really allowed me to grow. So I guess like bottom line, pick a school, not just to commit to, but to apply to where you think you're going to grow the most. Sorry, that was like a lot.
No, you're good. Thanks, Cindy. Crystal, you wanna add?
Yeah, I want to start off by talking a little bit maybe about why I chose CMU. So I'm an engineering major, and engineering is really good at CMU, so I knew they had really good academics for me, for my major at least. And also, I really liked that they put a lot of emphasis on interdisciplinary programs. So for instance, we have like kind of like a school called BXA where we have like you can like choose to like major in like more than one thing and then you can kind of like integrate it together. So for instance, I know someone at my school, he's a really good friend of mine. He's currently in the BXA program and he's majoring in physics and piano. Um, and I also really like the location of CMU. I love Pittsburgh. I visit it every year with my parents. And then another thing that was really big to me was that I knew that I wanted to go into research. I didn't know if I was going to do it like career-wise, but I knew that I wanted to get involved, like get experience in research. And CMU has a really big emphasis on research. I think I read somewhere that like 85% of undergrads get involved in research during their time there. And then overall, I visited the college campus. I really vibed with it. Yeah. And so I think it's really important to think about things like academic fit, also like social fit. So in terms of like clubs, extracurriculars, also like location. And then I know financial aid also plays a really big role. And that was like one of my, I guess, cons about CMU because it's pretty expensive. And then I would also say like internship and research opportunities, co-ops, things like that also played a really big role, at least for me. And then in terms of like how you can choose a school, I would say like definitely talk to like alumni or like current students. Like maybe if you like don't know anyone, at least like in Charlottesville, you can definitely connect with people like on LinkedIn. I know like maybe like Instagram or like Instagram alumni pages or something like that. And then like Cindy said, also like visit the campus, like do campus tours or like admitted student days.
Yeah. That just about covers it. Is there anything anyone else wants to add? Okay. If not, I'm gonna let any panelists give any of their last thoughts before we move on to open Q&A. I just want to say that first of all, thanks everyone for coming. And I also just want to kind of, for any rising seniors out there or anyone um, doing this process, I just want to reassure you guys. I know it's a hard time. It's a lot of stuff to be doing. It's very stressful. But I think the biggest thing that got me out of it was realizing, like, yes, it's going to be super hard these few months, but by January, it's over, and there's nothing you can really do about what's happened. And I feel like that brought me a lot of comfort because I knew after these 3 months, like, I could relax and whatever happens, happens and be okay with that decision.
Yeah. And don't forget to enjoy your senior year.
Any other panelists have last thoughts before open Q&A? Okay, cool. We are gonna move on to open Q&A. I'm gonna first have panelists answer anything that's already in the chat. I'll read it out loud and then anyone can answer. And then as we're doing this, if anyone has any other outstanding questions, feel free to type them in the chat and we will also read and answer them. Yes, so right now we have a question about letters of rec, I think. So someone says, my school recently split into two. My previous counselor and I had a great relationship over the 2 years, while my current counselor distinctly hates me. Am I able to ask my previous counselor to write a letter of rec, or am I cooked? Does anyone
Um,
have experience in
I
this?
can actually answer that, even though this may be slightly different because I was still the same school, but I did get switched around with counselors a lot, and I also had a really good counselor junior year who I wanted to stick with, and I got switched to someone else senior year, and I did have my junior year counselor write my letter, though my senior year counselor didn't distinctly hate me, which would maybe make her harder to work with. But you can basically, there's a process in which you can request your current counselor, so your new counselor, to write a letter on school links or whatever website your school is doing it through. And they, at least the two counselors, if they communicate properly, can have the other counselor write a letter for you and submit it through your new counselor. So it's definitely possible. Whether your new counselor is willing to work with that or not is beyond me. So
Yeah, I also want to add on to this because I also have a similar experience. My counselor, I had a really great relationship with him. I think he knew a lot about me and understood me a lot, but then he moved schools after my junior year. He moved to a different school district, not a school different school in the district. And I think I actually don't actually completely remember how we did this, but he did agree to write my letter, and I think it was the same thing that Isabel did, where he worked with my current counselor to have her submit it on his behalf. But I think there is a way for him to write it directly. But yeah, if you want, I can reach out and ask how he did it again. Because I forgot. I think Chris, did you also do that?
No, I just completely built a new relationship with my counselor.
Yeah, but there's different ways to approach this. And it's definitely possible to have your old one write it. Yeah. Okay, how do you build a relationship with your counselor? Okay, this is a good one. Does anyone want to talk about this? Like, how do you build that initial relationship?
Just talk with your counselor.
True.
I would
I
say,
mean,
because I got a new counselor my senior year as well, that like I started off by like in the beginning of the school year, I was just like, hey, I'm a little bit confused about the college application process and I have some questions. Do you think maybe we could meet? And she was like, yeah, sure. And so like, I don't know, I showed up to the meeting and like, um, I was like showing her like all my stuff and stuff, and she was very receptive. She uh like she was great. I feel like because I don't think I got to know my other counselor quite as well. I feel like I really like tried to build a new relationship with her. And yeah, it all worked out in the end.
Yeah, as someone who had a pretty good relationship with my previous counselor before he left, I think I just had a lot of questions my freshman year, and my sophomore year. So I would go like talk to him a lot. I would be like, hey, I really like this school. Like, what do you think I can do to get into this school? Or if I had questions about like grades or switching classes, I would go to him, and then naturally he would ask like, oh, why do you want to switch classes? Like, why this and this and this? And then he naturally got to know me that way. I also think that if you I mean, I guess it depends on what role your counselor plays in your school, but oftentimes if I had like a club thing and I wanted the school admin to know about the club thing, I would reach out to him first and be like, hey, who do I talk to for this? Can you talk to this person for me? And I think that's how I got to talk to him a lot. Yeah. Just ask questions. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next question. What is a personal essay and what should I write about? Is this what you submit for the Common App essay? Does anyone want to take this?
Yeah, I'm assuming by like personal essay, you mean like personal statement, but yeah, that's like the 650 word essay that you would submit for the Common App essay. Like in the application, there'll be a part for like writing your personal statement, and then they give you several prompts. But like the first prompt is write about anything you want, and usually most people take that. You can use the prompts if you want, but that's usually what the personal statement is. And then for UC applications, they have like what I think it's like personal insight questions, PIQs. That's like a different system. It's like, it's 8 questions and you pick four. They're shorter, 350 350 words. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to add to this?
And for the part where it's what should I write about, you can literally write about anything you want, like anything at all. I applied for an international relations major to all my colleges, and I wrote about growing up as a military child and moving a lot and how that affected, like how that made me want to major into international relations. But I know people that write about anything. You can write about anything that you're passionate about, something that you think is going to really drive home that point of here I am, this is me, this is what you should have sent me. So it's the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, for sure. I think we talked a little bit in depth about essays a little bit earlier in the panel. I think this person might not have come when we're talking about those, but if you want to go back and listen to what we were talking about earlier, I will send the recording of this panel out afterwards. So yeah. And then I don't know if I'm saying this right, but Gio has their hand raised. Do you want to ask a question, or you can also go ahead and ask in the chat?
All right, he had to go.
Oh,
But
okay.
his question was what's special about like the REA EAED process?
Okay.
Just like general stuff like that.
Yeah, we can. Um, I mean, I'll answer it so people can listen to it in the recording back. But I think we talked a little bit on this earlier. REA, restrictive early action, not binding, but you can only apply to one. EDs also is binding, you can only apply to one. Um, some people say like it gives you a better chance if you apply early, and but I think that is special circumstances. Like they really only give you a leg up if A, the school isn't too competitive, B, you are a legacy or you solve cancer or you do mind-breaking research, or you like your family donated a building. But that's mostly because the people who are applying early are these types of people. And um, while the acceptance rate might be a little higher, it's because but like while the acceptance rate is a little higher, applying against much more competitive applicants. So keep that in mind. I was gonna say something else, but I forgot. Um, yeah, just keep those things in mind. Does anyone have anything else to add to that? Okay. Um, let's go to the next one. I think this is okay. Oh my gosh. I can't navigate the chat. Okay, it looks like Preston an answered Annabelle's question, but yeah, common data set is talent ability means what are you good at and what sets you apart. And then Arsalan's asking how many colleges should you apply to the max? Isabel, you want to take this one?
I can. So the Common App limits you to 20 schools, though there are crazy people who like make multiple accounts, so you can apply to more than that. I think it really depends on the person you are and your application style. Personally, it brought me a lot of comfort to Shotgun because frankly, like we are at a point where like so many qualified students are applying to so many of these top schools that even if you are a really qualified applicant, you can definitely get rejected. So it just provided me a lot of comfort when I was applying to apply to a lot of them and to like Shotgun, the Ivy League, or like other top schools that I really wanted to get into. So I think personally, I'm really happy with the way I applied. I still applied to all the schools I wanted to. I got through my list early and I added more in the end, which is not needed. You don't need to do that when you already applied to 20 schools. But I think so that just depends on each person. Other people like to be really like just keep it at like a 9-ish, I think is a really frequent number I hear. That way you have a good balance of reach, safety, and target. But it really depends on the person, how you feel as you're building your college list. On the other hand, a lot of people like, cannot time manage, 20 different separate applications. And then it'll also vary if you apply with the UC app, which would allow you to kind of apply to 9 schools in one go. So that could definitely kind of skyrocket the number of colleges you're applying to. So I think there's not really a maximum, though I definitely wouldn't advise going over 20 something because I think that it gets to a point. But it's up to you. If applying to 50 schools brings you comfort, you can apply to 50 schools. And if you can send good applications to all of those 50 schools, like do what you want. It's whatever makes you comfortable and whatever makes you more confident in the process.
Yeah, for sure. I also had a similar mentality. I was like, hey, if I apply to all the Ivies, I have to get into at least one, right? Um, but obviously I know people who applied to like 4 schools and were fine. So yeah, it's up to personal preference. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions? We are technically at time, but if anyone has any, feel free to ask and then we can get back to you at a later time. Okay. Um, so that kind of concludes our panel. Thank you guys so much for coming. Um, if everyone could, I don't know if you guys know, but can you guys react and give your panelists a round of applause? Thank you, thank you to how do I react? Okay, anyways, thank you for all the panelists for coming and volunteering their time. Uh, it was super helpful to hear everyone's insights. I think everyone has a different journey on the college application process, and there's again no really right way of doing it. But yeah, if you guys have any outstanding questions, I have our panelists and also our moderators' emails up here if you want to reach out to anyone, and ask any follow-up questions. Yeah, I'll just keep the screen up for you guys if you want to write them down or take a screenshot. But other than that, I think that concludes our panel. You guys are free to go whenever you guys free to go whenever you guys write down those emails if you want them. But yeah, I will ask panelists to stay on for a little bit longer after everyone leaves. But yeah, thanks everyone for coming and have a great rest of your day. And good luck on your college applications. Did everyone leave?
I'm gonna leave.
Okay, thanks guys. I think that went pretty well. I will let you know if anyone asks me any questions for you guys. But yeah, thanks for coming. I know Preston and Cindy woke up pretty early, so thanks for doing that. Really appreciate it. Um, yeah. If you guys want to give feedback on how this worked, feel free to text me because we will probably do this again next year. So would appreciate any feedback on how we ran this and yeah, thanks for coming. Oh, as for who had the most referrals, let me look this up. Actually, I think it's a tie. Um, where's my forms? Hold on, it's on my computer. Think wait, I need to share my screen. Okay, guys, final review. It was definitely a tie between Annabelle, which is she was an attendee, but she's president of a different chapter. Cindy, because someone wrote Cindy's name in all caps. And Summer. So thank you guys for your referrals. I will reach out for your gift cards. Thank you for coming. Yeah, I'm gonna let you guys go.
Bye.